They said humans couldn't handle weapons. Then the hall went silent. Before the first shot, the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Defense Initiative had seen many species petition for military inclusion over the centuries. The Krillians with their forearms and natural armor plating. The Zephyrians with their enhanced neural processing that allowed them to calculate ballistic trajectories in microseconds. The towering Gorvak, whose chitinous exoskeletons could withstand plasma burns that would vaporize most organic matter. But never had they seen anything quite like the human delegation. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the center of the vast circular chamber, her modest 5'6" frame dwarfed by the alien representatives surrounding her. Above, the crystal dome revealed the swirling nebulae of the Andromeda sector, where the war against the Void Collective raged endlessly. The stakes couldn't be higher, and yet the assembled delegates seemed more concerned with stifling their laughter than addressing the crisis at hand. Honored Assembly, Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. Humanity formally requests inclusion in the GDI combat forces. A sound rippled through the chamber that the human ear might mistake for applause, but Chen's briefings had taught her to recognize it as the Altarian equivalent of snickering. High Counselor Vexthul, a crystalline being whose form refracted, light in mesmerizing patterns, leaned forward on his dais. Honored human. Vexthul's translated voice carried an unmistakable note of condescension. We appreciate Earth's enthusiasm. Your species has contributed admirably to our agricultural and cultural sectors. Your music and poetry have brought joy to many worlds. More chittering from the assembly. Chen's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but her expression remained professional. However, the High Counselor continued, warfare requires certain physical and mental attributes that your species simply lacks. You have no natural armor, no enhanced reflexes, no telepathic coordination abilities. Your reaction times are adequate for civilian pursuits, but in combat. He paused, the crystalline equivalent of a shrug. The liability would be too great. General Korthak of the Gorvak hegemony rose from his section, his massive form casting shadows across half the chamber. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. The humans cannot even withstand the recoil of our standard-issue weapons. Their fragile bones would shatter. Their primitive nervous systems would overload from combat stims. They are decorative at best. The laughter was open now. Even some of humanity's supposed allies in the Centauri coalition seemed amused by the spectacle. Chen felt the eyes of 1,000 different species upon her, each one convinced of humanity's inadequacy. I understand your concerns, Chen said quietly, and something in her tone made the nearest delegates pause their chuckling. Perhaps a demonstration would address them more effectively than words. High Counselor Vexthul's crystalline form dimmed with what might have been surprise. A demonstration? You wish to prove your combat effectiveness here, in the Grand Assembly? If the Assembly permits it. The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, Vexthul gestured to the center of the chamber. Very well. Defense Captain Threxnall, please join the human in the demonstration circle. The Krillian who descended to the chamber floor was a walking weapon. Each of his forearms ended in natural bone spurs that could punch through steel plating. His carapace bore the scars of 100 battles, and his compound eyes tracked movement with predatory precision. He had personally killed over 300 Void Collective drones in single combat. The challenge parameters appeared in holographic text above the circle. Non-lethal engagement, standard GDI training protocols, victory by incapacitation or surrender. Weapons materialized on floating platforms, energy rifles, plasma cannons, projectile weapons from a dozen different worlds. Threxnall moved with fluid confidence, his forearms allowing him to wield multiple weapons simultaneously. He selected a Zephyrian pulse rifle in 2 hands, a Gorvak plasma carbine in the 3rd, and kept his 4th free for his natural weapons. Chen walked to the weapons platform with unhurried steps. Her hand passed over exotic energy weapons that could level buildings, plasma cannons that could melt through starship armor, and gravitational disruptors that could crush matter at the molecular level. She selected a simple kinetic rifle, human-made, chemical propellant, mechanical action. The assembled delegates fell silent, but not from anticipation, from confusion. Several began furiously consulting their databases, unable to understand why anyone would choose such primitive technology. Chen checked the weapon with practiced efficiency, her movements economical and precise. She chambered a training round, engaged the safety, and took her position across from Threxnol. "Begin," announced Vexthul. What happened next would be dissected by military analysts for decades. Threxnol raised his weapons, his enhanced reflexes already calculating firing solutions. His compound eyes tracked multiple targeting vectors. His natural armor plates shifted to optimal defensive positions. Every advantage evolution and technology could provide was his. Chen stood perfectly still. The Krillian's fingers tightened on his triggers. Energy crackled along plasma conduits. Targeting lasers painted Chen's chest. Chen's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped. Her pupils dilated slightly as ancient human, neural pathways engaged. Pathways carved by a million years of persistence hunting on African plains. By millennia of warfare that had shaped her species from stone axes to starships. In that moment, something primal awakened in Commander Sarah Chen. Not the fury of the Gorvak, not the cold calculation of the Zephyrians, but something uniquely human. The patient, inevitable certainty of a species that had climbed to the top of every food chain it had ever encountered. The demonstration circle became a kill zone and Chen was no longer prey. She moved, not with the explosive speed of enhanced reflexes or the supernatural grace of alien biology, but with something far more terrifying: perfect, practiced lethality, refined by countless generations of predators who had never needed natural weapons because they made better ones. The kinetic rifle spoke once. Threxnol's pulse rifle fell from nerveless fingers as the training round took him center mass with surgical precision, his armor's distributed impact system overwhelmed by the concentrated force. His plasma carbine never fired. Chen was already moving, the ancient dance of advance and fire that had carried her ancestors from the caves of Earth to the stars themselves. The second shot took out Threxnol's remaining weapons. The third shattered his primary right knee joint through a gap in his armor that no Krillian had ever thought to protect, because no enemy had ever been precise enough to target it. Threxnol hit the ground hard, his compound eyes wide with something approaching terror. Above him, Chen stood with her rifle at ready position, breathing steady, expression calm. The Grand Assembly sat in absolute silence. "The human body," Chen said conversationally, never taking her eyes off her downed opponent, "has several disadvantages in combat, as you've noted. We're fragile, we're slow, we have no natural weapons." She saved her rifle and slung it over her shoulder. "But you missed something in your analysis. We're the only species in known space that evolved as persistence predators. We didn't develop claws or armor or venom because we didn't need them. We developed something better." Chen looked up at the assembled delegates, and for a moment they saw something that made several species' instinctive prey responses trigger. "We developed patience, and when the time comes to kill, we don't miss." She extended a hand to help Threxnol to his feet. The Krillian stared at her for a long moment before accepting the assistance, respect replacing the confidence in his compound eyes. High Counselor Vexthul's crystalline form pulsed with rapid, light patterns, the Altarian equivalent of a racing heartbeat. The demonstration is concluded. The Assembly will recess to consider humanity's application. But Commander Sarah Chen was already walking toward the exit, her duty done. Behind her, 1,000 alien voices began to whisper in languages she couldn't understand, but the meaning was universal. The apex predators of Earth had come to the stars and they were still hunting.